3 weeks out of Gibraltar. 300 miles of open water in every direction. A 40-foot sailboat moving on wind alone because the engine had fallen silent 2 days before. The man at the helm had already checked everything. The fuel was clean and the pistons sound. The injection pump, the part that pushes diesel into the cylinders, worked perfectly. Nothing inside the engine was broken, but a plastic box the size of a paperback, bolted hard against the hot exhaust manifold, had quietly died. And without that box, a 40-year-old engine that asks for nothing but oil and fuel will not turn over. The trouble had started slowly, 3 weeks earlier. The engine began to hunt, surging and dropping back to idle on its own. On day 2, the stop button quit working. On day 3, the engine cut out and stayed dead. He finished the passage under sail. At the next port, he found the Volvo Penta agent, who told him something strange. He was the 19th that season. 19 sailboats limping into one port in one summer. Not one of them had a broken engine. This is the story of how the engine you paid for stopped being the engine you own. For 47 years, the name on that green engine meant one simple thing: it would get you home. In 2006, one quiet decision changed what the name meant. Have you ever trusted a brand for years, then found the thing you bought was no longer the thing they were selling? Drop the make and model in the comments. This is what Yachts and Boats covers. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. The story starts in Sweden in 1958. A small engine company in Gothenburg built a single-cylinder diesel the size of a paint can. 7 horsepower. It had no computer, no instrument panel, and no dealer network standing between the owner and a running engine. You put fuel in, you changed the oil, and it ran. That little engine went to sea, and it kept its promise. The engines that followed kept it for the next 4 decades. The MD2, the MD11, the 2000 series, all built on the same idea. By 2005, when the last fully mechanical sailboat diesel rolled off the line, Volvo Penta held about half the world market for sailboat engines. Half the planet's cruising sailors trusted one green block under the cabin steps. The company had real history behind that dominance. In 1954, Volvo Penta built the world's first turbocharged diesel made for serial production. In 1959, an American engineer named Jim Wynn designed a drive in his garage that the company licensed and sold as the Aquamatic Stern Drive. That single product became the foundation of Volvo Penta's entire powerboat business. At the time, Volvo Penta and Yanmar split the new boat sailing market almost evenly, with Beta Marine, Nanny, and Westerbeke fighting for what was left. Volvo Penta was not the challenger in that market, it was the benchmark. These engines were built to be fixed by the people who owned them. The injection pump needed no software, no firmware, no laptop. It ran on whatever diesel a sailor could find, from a refinery in Rotterdam to a drum on a dock in the Tuamotus. A sailor in the Marquesas could rebuild one with parts from any farm supply depot that stocked Perkins components. The blocks were industrial. The supply chain reached every inhabited coast. When a raw water pump impeller failed in a remote anchorage, a sailor swapped it in 20 minutes with a spare he kept in a plastic bag in the tool drawer. The proof sits in the logbooks. Owners on the cruising forums reported engines reaching 8,000 and 10,000 hours on nothing but oil changes, filters, and the odd impeller swap. A 1967 model is still in daily service in Victoria, British Columbia, described by its owner as starting perfectly every time. A 1963 engine logged 35 years under one owner who called it completely reliable. In the 1990s, the green Volvo Penta badge was not a luxury badge. It was a reliability badge. It told a sailor the engine would outlast the boat around it. That was the promise. This is where it got dismantled. The decision did not come from malice, it came from chasing a different customer. By the 2000s, Volvo Penta sold to 2 very different people. The powerboat owner wanted touchscreens, joystick docking, and integrated electronics. The sailboat owner wanted to cross an ocean without phoning anyone. In 2005, the company built a system for the first customer and then sold it to the second. That system was called EVC, the Electronic Vessel Control Platform. It tied the engine, the throttle, the displays, and the helm into one network. For a big powerboat that rarely left sight of a dealer, that made sense. For a sailor in the middle of the Pacific, it became a leash. The leash was not a side effect. It was a closed system, built the same way the technology industry builds them. The more parts that depend on one network, the harder it becomes for an owner to leave. A sailor who replaced a failed Volvo display with a Garmin chart plotter found his engine data simply vanished. The EVC language was private. Only Volvo Penta tools could read it. The system held. If that pattern sounds familiar, it should. It is the same pattern a farmer hits when his John Deere tractor throws a code only a dealer laptop can clear. It is the same trap a phone owner hits when a swapped screen kills a feature he paid for. The Marine version is just less famous. Same playbook, carried out on the water. It reaches powerboaters too. One owner of a small Ranger trawler pulled up to a waterside restaurant, switched the engine off, and then could not get the system to turn back on. After a string of phone calls, his dealer talked him through starting the engine with a screwdriver. A boat pinned at a restaurant dock, freed by a hand tool and a helpline. The mechanical engine was never the weak point. The weak point was a single box the engine never needed to begin with. The small D1 and D2 sailboat engines that replaced the old green diesels were still mechanical underneath. The injection pump was mechanical, and so was the combustion cycle. No computer decided how fuel entered the chamber. The engine had barely changed from the one that ran 10,000 hours across 4 decades. But Volvo Penta needed these engines to talk to the EVC screens. A mechanical engine speaks in diesel, not in data. So the company built a translator. A black plastic box called the MDI, short for Mechanical Diesel Interface. Its job was to read the engine's sensors and feed the numbers to the display, and to handle 4 control signals at startup. It fired the glow plugs before a cold start, triggered the starter when the key turned, and opened the fuel solenoid. 1 second after the engine caught, it switched on the alternator. That was the entire list. Here is the part that matters. The MDI does nothing to keep the engine running. Once the diesel is turning, you could throw the box overboard and the engine would never notice. It monitors the engine and reports the numbers to a screen and nothing more, but it sits inside the start circuit. With a dead MDI, the starter gets no signal, the glow plugs get no heat, and the fuel solenoid stays shut. A 45-year-old mechanical heart, perfect and ready to run, held hostage by a box that only talks to an instrument panel. From the cockpit, the failure has a signature. The engine begins to hunt, the stop button quits responding, the start button comes and goes, and sometimes the engine simply dies without warning. The forums have logged hundreds of these accounts, many of them mid-passage, far from any dealer's reach. Now look at where they bolted it. The MDI was mounted directly against the water-cooled exhaust manifold. That manifold is one of the hottest surfaces in the entire engine bay. Heat poured straight into the electronics by conduction. The vibration of a diesel running at 2500 RPM hammered the same circuit board, the solder joints, and the relays. And the whole thing sat in sealed, salt-laden air, which corrodes every connection it can reach. Heat, vibration, and salt, all attacking one required electronic box at the same time. An engineer named Bretscher pulled the full record. He runs a marine design firm called Nordkyn Design, and he holds a master's in computer science with a background in industrial process control. In July 2019, he documented every version of the box from public Volvo Penta part numbers. The first MDI shipped in 2006. A new one arrived in 2007, another in 2010, 2 in 2011, a fresh series in 2015. 2 more in 2017, a 2019 variant, and 2 new part numbers in 2025. By his count, that is roughly 14 separate hardware versions in 19 years. Some of the new versions failed worse than the ones they replaced. His conclusion was not an opinion, it was documentation. The box, he found, has zero control over the engine once it is running. The emissions rules are met entirely by the mechanical injection system and the thermostat. The only thing driving 14 redesigns was that the box kept failing. A properly placed module, away from the heat, with vibration isolation, would have solved this in 2006. The mounting location was the decision. The company kept shipping it anyway. Then comes the bill. A replacement MDI runs between £380 and £500 in the UK, plus fitting labour. Owners in Europe have reported €550 for the part alone. In Australia, one owner paid $950, plus another $260 for labour. An annual oil filter for the old mechanical engine cost about £12. That was the cheap part. One firm, Power Products Systems, studied the failure pattern and published its findings in December 2025. The result was blunt. These modules fail on age, between 7 and 12 years, no matter how many hours the engine has run. Read that again. A mechanical diesel measures its life in hours. The box measures its life on a calendar. This is the cruel twist. The sailor who uses his boat 2 weeks every summer is not protected by his low hours. He is more exposed. His careful use protects the engine and does nothing for the box rotting against the manifold, whether he sails or not. A 9-year-old engine with 200 hours is closer to failure than a 5-year-old engine with 3,000. The failures piled up fast. A 2018 model failed its MDI with 70 hours on the clock. The agent who replaced it, in Lanzarote, said it was the 19th unit he had fitted that season. One owner bought a boat and found the engine already on its 3rd box with under 4 years of use. On a catamaran with 2 engines, an owner replaced 5 MDI boxes between them, and the first replacement failed in under 2 minutes. By 2018, Volvo Penta opened its first campaign to replace failing MDYs, citing erratic behavior. By 2023, a wider campaign followed, and the company is keeping it open until November 2030. Then the government stepped in. In March 2025, the UK Office for Product Safety and Standards issued a formal recall of the EVC2 control system. The risk it listed was not inconvenience. It was injuries and drowning because a software fault could take away gear control at low speed. In March 2026, a second government recall followed, this one for burns from hot oil spray. The scale of who is affected is enormous. Volvo Penta has sold more than 100,000 of its larger D4 and D6 engines since 2005, by its own published figures. The smaller D1 and D2 sailboat fleet, fitted into production boats by Beneteau, Bavaria, Hans, and nearly every major builder for 20 years, is a number the company has never published. Given its market share over that period, it runs into the hundreds of thousands. The old mechanical engines ran 47 years without a single government recall of their control systems. The new architecture drew 4 government safety campaigns in 8 years. One of them carries a drowning classification. The math is not subtle. A reliability legend recalled by a government for a risk of drowning. Which surprises you more, that it happened, or that the engine underneath was never the problem? Volvo Penta is not the only company that built a closed gate. Mercury Marine runs a system it calls SmartCraft. In its own marketing, Mercury describes SmartCraft as an exclusive digital network and a private language that only its own parts can speak, read by a dealer diagnostic tool. This is not a leak, it is a selling point. The result on the water is a short list of bad options. A Yanmar mechanic in Tahiti cannot read a Volvo fault. An independent shop cannot buy the dealer's diagnostic tool. The software that reads the stored fault is sold to authorized centers, not to the owner who paid for the engine. So a D-Series owner whose engine will not start can wait days for a part to be flown in, or pay dealer rates at the nearest authorized center. Or he can find a forum post written by someone who worked out what 3 small terminals on a plastic box were for. That third option never appeared in the owner's manual. The dealer held the only key the company would sell, so the sailors went looking for the one the company refused to print. By 2021, 15 years after the D-Series launched, the sailors had cracked it themselves. Detailed bypass diagrams were passed around the sailing forums. The fix was almost insulting in its simplicity. Find 3 terminals on the underside of the module. Bridge 2 of them with a jumper wire. The engine starts without the MDI and the mechanical injection pump does the rest. The diagram was posted for free. It was written by sailors who had worked out what a screwdriver was worth when the nearest dealer was 300 miles of open water away. Volvo Penta never published one. One Brazilian sailor spent months stuck in a marina waiting on an MDI fault, then paid Beta Marine to wire a bypass so the engine would start and he could sail home. Beta Marine made a different choice from the start. It builds its sailboat engines on Kubota industrial blocks, the same logic the old green engines ran on. A Beta owner anchored off the coast of Chile does not need a dealer's laptop. He opens the hatch and reads the injection pump with his own eyes. Kubota service parts sit on shelves at farm supply depots on every inhabited continent. Beta Marine's chief executive, Andrew Grokut, said it plainly to Yachting Monthly in December 2021. A mechanical system, he said, is safe and will not power down at the wrong time. He added that a mechanical engine can also burn cleaner alternative fuels with no changes at all. 2 companies faced the same choice and went opposite ways. One built an engine the sailor could fix. The other built a screen and made the engine serve it. After 14 hardware versions, 4 government safety campaigns, and a recall held open to 2030, one fact stands clear. The engine was never the weak point. The control architecture wrapped around it was. This is where the Marine story rejoins the bigger one. In January 2025, the Federal Trade Commission sued John Deere over the same kind of repair lockout. A report from the Public Interest Research Group put farmer losses at $3 billion a year in downtime, plus another $1.2 billion in extra repair bills. Deere's own repair software for customers costs more than $3,000 a year. In April 2025, the company settled a repair lawsuit for $99 million, which works out to about 79 cents per acre. The boats are now catching up to the tractors. In 2024, the US Copyright Office made it legal to bypass a software lock just to diagnose your own boat. In early 2026, Delaware lawmakers introduced the first state bill written to give boat owners the right to repair their engines and onboard systems. The right is arriving. The tools to use it are still fenced off. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe to Yachts and Boats. The 1963 engine that ran 35 years never once asked its owner for a software update. It is still out there, still sailing. The D-Series engines built since 2006 are entering their 2nd decade now. Some are already on their 4th box. And in 2025, Volvo Penta launched an upgrade program that sells a new electronic control system as the cost-saving fix for a failed one. The sailors who owned the old mechanical engine in 1997 needed no upgrade program. Their cost-saving measure was an oil filter and a wrench. Whether the 2006 decision was the only road open to the company, whether emissions rules and investor pressure left no other door, is a question Volvo Penta has not answered out loud. The revision table answers in the only language that needs no interpretation. 14 versions across 19 years, and the company is still patching. What the sailors lost was not just a reliable engine. They lost the version of a company that trusted the owner to fix what broke. The mechanical engine he thought he was buying is still in there, sitting under the box. He just cannot reach it without permission. Once you see that pattern on a boat, you start to see it on a tractor, in a phone, in a car. You no longer own the things you cannot fix. The title is yours, and the key belongs to someone else. The only monopoly they can enforce is the one you accept. If you own a D-series engine and you have never seen the BY pass diagram, read the forums before your next passage. The diagram is there, posted for free by sailors who decided the key was theirs to cut.